Hey guys, Andy back here from Mediocre Hobbies. On today's video, I'm going to show you guys how to base up your armies quick and easy. We are going to be going through 5 different basing schemes, so I'm sure there's something in here for everybody. Hope you guys enjoy the video, and I'll see you in the end. Okay, in preparation for the tutorial, I've gotten these 5 bases PVA glued and added some sand. I've left some gaps in some of the bases, and we'll get to why later in the video. The first base that I'm going to show you guys is a desert or a sand base. It's very simple. It starts with a base coat of Zandri dust and you basically cover up all of the sand with this color. I usually add a touch of water to the base paints just to make them flow a little better in between all those grains of sand and stuff. Yeah, just take your time and make sure you get a good strong coat of Zandri dust all over these sand bases. It doesn't matter if you hit the blacked out areas with the Zandri dust at this stage. We'll tidy that up all later when we're trying to do the shoreline effect. So don't be panicking, just get that Zandri dust coat on. The next thing we're going to do is quickly throw a shade over this base. So the shade we're going to use is Seraphim Sepia. We are going to cover up the sand with a nice thick coat of this. Load up your brush quite a lot because the sand definitely soaks up the wash, so you tend to use quite a lot of it doing these. But it's worth it in the end. It has a fantastic effect. This is the kind of heavy coat that we're looking for all over both of the bases that I've done here. And now you just need to leave them down for a while until they dry. Okay, with the shade now dry, we're going to move on to our first dry brush. We're going to use tolerance sand for this. Load up the brush, wipe most of the excess off, and just nice, slow, tolerance sand dry brush all over the bases. You can give it a couple of passes just to make sure you catch as many grains of that sand as possible. Nice clockwork motion there just to help me get full coverage. And same with this base here. Dry brush is such a quick and easy technique, and when you're applying it to bases, it just makes the whole process take no time at all. Okay, going on to the last dry brush, we're going to throw a Wraithbone base coat, and we're going to be dry brushing this all over them as well. This is going to be a slightly lighter dry brush than the first one, just to help build up those layers of color. As I say, this is quite white, quite golden, but it does have a tint of yellow to it. So it does really work for that like golden sand style look. The camera shows these as quite a close-up. They look a lot more natural face to face or tabletop level. But you'll have a look at them now in a second with the rims blacked out and see the difference. And here you can quickly see the 2 sand or desert bases done with the rest of it blacked out, so you can just see what the sand looks like. I think it's got loads of depth and I think it looks fantastic. The next set of bases we're going to move on to is kind of like a grassy tundra or like muck or mud bases. And the first thing we're going to do is a full base coat of Ranox High all over the sand. As you can see, we've left gaps in one of the bases like we did in the last one. And that's going to be for an extra textured effect later on. Optional, but I think it looks really cool. So, like I said before, add a touch of water to the Ranox High just so you get between all those granules of sand and get a really nice brown base coat on all of these pieces. Once that's dry, we're going to move on to 3 quick consecutive dry brushes. First one, Mornfang. The trick is to basically start off with a heavy dry brush and get lighter and lighter as you go along, building up those layers. So Mornfang we're going to be quite aggressive with, and we're going to get a lot of that onto the sand or the dirt. One of the important things to remember is this is a messy process. So the base only really comes together at the very end. I really think when you retouch up the base rims black again, that's when the base really pops. So always trust yourself, stay confident, and follow yourself through until the end. You'll be quite happy with the results. So the next paint is going to be the XV88. Like I said before, this is going to be the mid dry brush. So heavier than the last one we did, but lighter than the final one we're going to do. As you can see, I'm being a lot more careful with this one. Just nice controlled downward swipes. Just catching a little bit of the sand. You can already start to see the layering. See the Ranox High, the Mornfang, and the XV88 through this now. This is the one we've left with the gaps in it. Like I said before, I will show what the gaps are for at the end, but it'll be well worth the wait. Now we're going to move on to the final dry brush. That's Ushabti Bone. This one is going to be just a light touch up on the base. We don't want to go crazy. Don't add too much bone to it, but as you can see how light the flicks are of my wrist, just controlling it. I love the result. Quickly throw it over the other base as well. There's that clockwork motion again, just catching at all the different angles of the base. And there's the 4 layers of paint applied to those bases. Took no time at all. Okay, next thing we're going to move on to is an urban base. So like before, we're going to start with a base coat of storm vermin fur, and we're going to get an all over coat on the sand. Like I've said 2 times already, I've put a touch of water in with this paint just to get in between all those cracks. And that's a full coat. The next thing that we are going to do is wait for that to dry fully, and then we're going to throw Agrax Earthshade over the top of that. Nice thick coat. Make sure you get in between all the granules. You will find that this will darken down that grey an awful lot, but with the 2 dry brushes we are going to do after it dries, it's going to bring it right back up again, and it's going to look great. Okay, now that that shade is fully dried, we're going to move on to the first dry brush, and that's Dawnstone. Using the same premise as before, knowing that we have 2 dry brushes to do, this one is going to be heavier and the next one is going to be lighter. So Dawnstone all over. Already you can see it pulling the colour back into the base and giving you that great urban environment. You can use this for loads of different army schemes, whether you want to be 40k like you're fighting through cities, rubble, that kind of stuff, or whether you want to be in like the realm of Gur in Age of Sigmar, just kind of desolate wasteland. It works great for either. And after that, we're going to move on to the final dry brush, which is Administratum Grey. And we're going to apply this, but like I said, lighter than the last coat. So just nice, slow flicks of the wrist. Just catching a little bit of that extra rock or pebble that's stuck there, just catching that a little bit. Like I said, this whole idea of a base coat of washing a bunch of layers, it really does add that depth to a base. It doesn't just look like one colour. Okay, now the 2 bases that we left gaps in the sand, we are going to go through and show you what I meant to do with those. So with the desert one, we are going to add a shoreline to it, and to the one on the right, we're going to add like toxic pools or toxic sludge, which I think will look super cool. So we're going to start with the shoreline one. So the 2 things we're going to need is some paint, and the only exotic material that I have is this Vallejo Extra Heavy Gel Gloss. It's not very expensive. I bought it to do my Idnet Deepkin bases last year, and it turned out great. So I'm going to show you guys how to use it now. So the first thing I want to do is just give the impression of water. You don't have to go crazy. You don't have to be an artist. We're not looking for you to paint in waves and shells and all that stuff. Just a dark blue base coat, stipple it on, and then as soon as that's dry, all we're going to do is move over to a white and stipple that on afterwards. So any white, any off-white, anything you've got your hands on, and just stipple that around the shoreline. I've got a pallid witch flesh close to me, so that's the paint that I'm going to use. And just like how I applied the blue with that stabbing motion, same thing I'm going to do with the white. I don't want any straight lines or anything like that. I want it to kind of look like the wash or the surf, whatever way you want to call it. Looks a bit harsh now, but once we apply the heavy gel gloss on top of that, it's actually quite clumpy. So you can kind of sculpt like waves and kind of that kind of thing. So it looks really cool. This is how it looks. It looks like thick PVA glue. Smells kind of like PVA glue as well, but it's kind of goopy here because I haven't used it in a while. So I'm going to scrape down a little bit and try and get some of the softer stuff and use that. And yeah, throw it on the base. So I'm literally going to throw quite a lot of it on, as you can see. And then I'm going to push it around. It's quite tacky and quite sticky, so it does go around fine. And with the texture tool that I'm using, it'll be hard to give me any of the kind of shapes or designs that I want. So in a second, you'll see me switch to a brush. and do another stippling motion. That's just to get more kind of natural shapes into the water. Be cleaning off the edge, keeping the base look nice and slick. As you can see, the shape of the gel doesn't really work there. Okay, these are the colors that we're going to use to add the kind of sludge or toxic waste effect to this base. So I've blacked out the middle bit, and then I'm just going to stab it with a bit of Elysian green just to get the first touch of green onto the base. Take your time. You don't want to hit the sand. It'll be kind of hard to explain if there's green sand. I suppose it could be overspill. No pressure. As you can see, I'm using a medium shade brush. It's quite a big bristled brush, but it does hold a fantastic point. So it is actually great for getting into all those little bits. And it holds enough paint that you can kind of get a lot of work done before you have to reload the brush. There we have it. Quick and simple. Moving on from that. Much more toxic color, the mook green. Same thing as before, but trying not to cover up the entire area. We're just going for kind of the middle of it. Just act like almost like a highlight for the pool of sludge. And once those paints are fully dried, you can then throw on an ard coat over the top of it, just to make sure that it keeps that sheen and shine. It looks like a pool of wet liquid, in this case the toxic sludge style. If you went for deeper, darker greens, you could also use them for like swamp bases and stuff like that, and it would look pretty good as well. As it stands, these are the 5 bases that we've created in today's video. I think they all look fantastic, but I'm now going to move along and show you just a couple of extra little tips and tricks, or just how to use certain materials, just to make some of these bases pop a little bit more, or even shift a little bit. So the first one is that urban environment. So it goes from the urban environment with the addition of Valhalla Blizzard, which is a texture paint to add snow. You could, by all means, have an urban environment that has been snowing wintertime, or like I said, a much harsher conditions in somewhere in the Age of Sigmar. Ogres, for instance, would look great on this color scheme of base, and then adding the snow just makes it tie into that army a hell of a lot better. This stuff kind of feels like mashed potato or whatever that you're pushing around the base. Sometimes it's not as tacky as you would like it, but I do love how it looks. It looks like proper thick, crunchy snow. As you can see, I dropped a bit, and I will now struggle to get it back onto the base now for a moment, but bear with me. And then once all that's applied, I'm just going to switch to a brush. I just stab it down just to create a little bit more of a natural effect onto the base. Quick, easy, and it looks great. The next thing we're going to do is those mud bases. So to make them look a little bit more natural, a little bit more like they're in some fields or a forest, just a couple of uneven patches of PVA glue added to the texture we've already got on the base. So the important thing is to not make this look uniform across an army, so don't do just 2 patches for every base, or 3 for every base. One has 1, one has 2, some have 4. Then once the PVA glue is on, I like to press down quite hard with the grass flock, which people think will flatten the grass and make it look bad, but when I'm cleaning it off, I flick the base upside down and I give it a few flicks on the back, and that makes the grass stand back up again on the other side. Makes it look nice and fluffy. I think that looks fantastic. This would be great for like Lord of the Rings or any kind of fantasy army. And the last but not least, we will move over to the desert base, and just the addition of a few tufts. I build and paint armies to be played with. They're for tournaments or they're for general games, so they're going to be handled a lot. So I don't trust the adhesive that comes on the back of the tufts. So I always add just a tiny dot of super glue to the base, and then push the grass tuff over the top of that. It means that they're never going to fall off, never going to go missing. Every time you open your case, there's not going to be 10 tufts kind of kicking around the bottom of your case and you're wondering what models they fell off of. And that was an extra 2 or 3 minutes work on top of the first batch of bases, and it transformed the first set into this. And now I think they look really great. Any one of these would look fantastic under a number of different armies. So I really hope you guys liked these bases. If you feel like I left out a basing scheme or anything like that, you can always pop a note in the comments below saying, I'd love to know how to do this, and I will get on that for you. And there we have it, guys. 5 cool basing schemes for your army projects. I think you'll agree that they're all quite easy to achieve, even the ones with a few extra steps that give us the shoreline and the ones that give us the swamp bases. Not difficult at all. We can definitely bash these out for army-wide projects. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, support me, support the channel, subscribe, like the video, drop me a comment if you have any questions. I do my very best to respond to absolutely every comment that is left for me. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye. Always remember, the plan is simple. We paint them all.